Hi everyone, welcome to our second workshop. Today we are going to cover one of the categories of the PICO CTF challenge, and this category is also a common category in cybersecurity competitions, and that is web exploitation. Before we dive in, we really need to understand what web exploitation is all about. And in the simplest of terms, it's exploiting or hacking into web-based applications, which can include websites. So you can think of web applications that are applications that allow users to conduct any activity online, for example, emails or websites. And there's many different ways to exploit web applications, and all different exploits look different. There isn't just a single way of exploiting applications. So some examples include injection attacks, cross-site scripting, also known as XSS, SQL injection attacks, and then through research, you may find confidential information out in the open that will allow you to just exploit any web application. And always there's new vulnerabilities arising. Hackers can come up with new vulnerabilities that didn't exist before. So there's a lot of different ways to exploit web applications. So commonly in CTF challenges, usually websites are exploited. So let's take a little bit of time to understand how websites are structured. Websites are developed using three common languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is a programming language that serves the content in the website. So that includes things like text, the tables, the headers. And CSS is the language that adds style to the content, so colors, fonts, themes. JavaScript actually adds functionality and interactivity to the website, such as pop-up boxes, forms, and other fun features. Let's take a look at how HTML is structured. When you are looking at the raw code, it could look something like this. So at the top, we have a doc type declaration. Then we have the head, which includes the title of the web page, and the body, which includes all of the content. In HTML, the content is usually put in between opening and closing tags. So as you can see here, we have the head, the opening head tag, and then we have the closing head tag. Then we have the opening body tag, and everything that's in the body, like a header, H1, means header 1. This is an HTML page, is the header, and then it's closed in the closing tag for the header, and then the entire body is closed after that. When you add comments in HTML, they're not visible on the page to the end user, but they're usually visible in the code of the page. Sometimes comments can include, important information. Sometimes people forget to delete comments and they can include secret information or confidential information that the public should not be seeing. An example of how a comment would look like is shown in this highlighted pink text that says hello. So it's usually these closing exclamation and then the two dashes, and then it's closed like that. So this is what a comment in HTML would look like. A lot of times you might have to analyze the comments section in the back end of the code to find some confidential or secret information. So it's really helpful to know. Let's talk about JavaScript now. So JavaScript code is inserted between script tags. It can be placed in the head or body of HTML content or in an external file. JavaScript interacts with HTML and it's executed in your browser. JavaScript has the ability to change HTML content, CSS, HTML attribute values, and it can also show HTML elements. And again, JavaScript adds interactivity to the website. Here is an example of how JavaScript and HTML work together. So as you can see, we have our HTML content, and within the HTML content in the body, we have a header, and then we have a script. In between the script tag, we have some JavaScript. And what this code does here is whenever the user visits the page, it's going to pop out an alert that says hello. So this is how JavaScript and HTML would look together in the backend and in the code. Let's talk about the HTTP protocol now. The HTTP protocol is the protocol which allows us to communicate with websites. What happens in the HTTP protocol is the client makes a request and the server responds. When clients make requests, a special method is specified, so get, post, delete. And then servers have status codes that they respond back with, and you are served the page. Let's take a look at this graphic to see better how this works. So what happens is, if, for example, a client wants to request a web page, for example, google.com, our browser uses the get request and sends that to the server. The server where the website is responds back with the status code. When it's successful communication, which means when our GET request has been accepted, we get the 200 status code from the server, which means, okay, here is the content. 200 is the most common server response. It usually means that, yeah, here you go, here's the web page. There are other types of responses like error, or if the page doesn't exist, but this is mostly the common one that we get. So we've been talking about code and all of this backend activity, like the requests, like the HTML code, and how do we view that when we're doing CTFs or just in general? We can use what is called developer tools, and developer tools come with most web browsers. I recommend using Firefox or Chrome for the developer tools, and it will usually look very similar on most browsers with some variations. I'm going to start off with my browser and show you where you can find developer tools. So I'm going to be using Firefox. In Firefox, you go under Tools, Browser Tools, and open up Web Developer Tools. This is going to open up this window right here, which is going to give us a little bit more information about the page. So let's just explore some of these tabs. Most of the times you're going to be using this Inspector tab, which is going to show you the HTML, the JavaScript, the CSS. So if we expand this tab right here, we could see some of the CSS over here that's taking place. We could see some of the layout, more CSS stuff. Anyway, so you can play around and choose a setup you like. If you don't like it at the top, you can also always have it placed at the bottom. This is our console. We're not really going to be using it in today's workshop. What I will be showing you is some network. So what's going to happen is I'm going to visit google.com. And as you can see, we've got all of these requests taking place. And if we take a look at them, so it's making a bunch of requests because there's all these images and links that have to load. So here is the 200. We requested Google and the server responded back with 200. This says status. I'm not sure why it's not expanding, but it says status right over here. And so here's our GET request, and we get OK, and we receive the web page. So that's a little bit of a look at how the HTTP protocol works. For the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, we're mostly going to be using our Inspector tab right here. Let's try a practice problem now to see how we would use web developer tools in a real-life CTF challenge. So I've gone to the Pico CTF website, and I've gone in the web exploitation category, and we're going to do this problem called scavenger hunt. It says there is some interesting information hidden around this site. Can you find it? And the hints are you should have enough information, enough info to find the files. Don't run a brute force. So let's go to this web page right here. And it's just some boring HTML. And let's see if... And it says I use these to make the site, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Let's see if we can open up and just view it in Web Developer Tools. So again, Web Developer Tools. So here we have the HTML. Here's the head. There's nothing really in the head. There's some important information about our CSS file and our JavaScript file. And let's see what's in the body. There is nothing here. And these things mean you can expand them. So I'm just going to keep expanding to see just if there's any hints. Oh, well, just found something. Here is a comment as we looked at earlier on. And it says, here's the first part of the flag, Pico CTF. So let's copy that. So I'm just going to copy this part right here. And I'm going to go back and just paste it into here, just so we have part of our flag. So let's try and check these pages right here and see if we can find hints in there. So I'm just going to copy the link to that. Hopefully if I go like this, it might give me, sorry, the quote shouldn't be there. Okay, so here's the CSS page. Oh, and the part 2 is also here. We went directly to the file. That's why we don't need to view it in the inspector. So let's just copy part of that. Let's go here and paste it. And let's check the JavaScript file. So if we go back to the page, there was a JavaScript file that we can visit. Let's see if we can visit that. And the hint, well, it seems comments can also be embedded like this. And the hint that we seem to be getting is that how can I keep Google from indexing my website? So let's try Googling this. I know what file it's talking about, but it's important that we also learn to use Google and that we are comfortable using Google and not afraid to use it during the CTF. How to get Google to index your website using a not index. Let's look at this page. So it says something about robots, using a robots.txt file. A robots.txt file is usually used to manage search engine crawler traffic from overloading your website with requests. It must be noted, however, that this type of file is not meant to hide web pages. Okay, so let's see if we can find a robots.txt file here. Oh, okay, so we got part 3 right here. And there's another hint. It says, I think this is an Apache server. Can you access the next flag? So let's see Apache server file. See what comes up. It says httpd.conf usually. So let's see. Let's see if we can access that doing that. It's not found. In continuing the search, I found something, I think, that talks about the file. So there's a lot of information, but when I went down here, I found something that talks about the access file. So let's take a look at that. It says access file named this. So let's try seeing if we can find it using that. Okay, so we have something here. It says, I love making websites on my Mac. I can store a lot of information there. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna have to Google some more. So Mac website link. Or making a website on Mac. So let's take a look at our hint. Again, it says, I love making websites on my Mac. I can store a lot of information there. So, we also got part 2. So when we get to this file, we get the part 4 of our flag. After a lot of researching, I came across this DS Store file for Mac, and this ended up having to work. So it's the desktop services store. So it's like the storage file, that kind of like the storage file that the hint was given for. So I tried this and it gave us our next flag part. So let's try it. And we get part 5. As you can see, it was a lot of, using the information on Google, as well as using the developer tools to come to the correct solution. It did take some time. So that was it for today's workshop. Thank you for attending. As always, please make sure to check out the Pico Primer, as it contains a lot of helpful information. Also, please make sure to check out the CanHack Resource Hub. There is a great video on web exploitation that discusses a lot of the concepts that we talked about in details. There's also concepts we didn't talk about that are important for the CTF included in that as additional information and hints. Thank you for tuning in for today's workshop. Next week, we're going to be building on some of the concepts that we discussed in today's workshop.